All right. Hi, Cornell. Hi, Jillian. Thank you so much for joining me here today on Vonvo.com to discuss gay rights in America. Just before we get started, I wanted to go over two quick things. The first is that right now this conversation is being recorded, and after the recording is completed, I'll be uploading this video to the internet to our YouTube channel. Is that okay with both of you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Perfect.
All right, great. And then on top of that, here at Vonvo, we're all about our discussion staying both civil and valuable. We don't want there to be any personal attacks against anyone. Are you guys fine with that ground rule as well?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, great. So let's get our conversation started. Cornell, if you wouldn't mind, would you mind just giving a quick background about yourself and just explain to anyone who watches this video why you're so passionate about this subject, and then Jillian and Blue, you go next.
Okay. My name is Cornell Woolridge. I currently live in Baltimore, Maryland, and I was raised in Texas, did a lot of schooling up north, and while I was raised in the church and have very strong religious background, I have always believed that everybody deserves equal right to life in pursuit of happiness. And yeah, I mean, gay rights for me is just like anybody else's rights, and I believe it's something that's very, very important for our country.
Okay, great. And Jillian and Blue, if you guys want to speak individually or together, whatever you'd like. All right, and Jillian, would you mind just giving a quick background of yourself and your friend Blue and why you guys are both so passionate about this topic?
Well, I'll start it up. I'm Omar and she's Jillian. Together we're the music group Male versus Female. I guess that the reason why we're passionate about this topic is because we do have a lot of friends and family as well within the gay community. And generally, we just feel like nobody has the right to judge somebody for what they like and what they prefer in general. If that's what they naturally prefer, then it's on them. And we are full supporters. We don't necessarily have to be gay ourselves. Like, we just support because we have loved ones that are gay as well.
Right. All right, so that brings me ultimately to my first question that each of you guys can kind of begin to take the discussion where you'd like. The idea over, this discussion, this subject being a debate over religion or a civil right. Cornell, could you talk about the difference between the two and what you actually personally believe, the right of gay rights in America, if it's more of a religious issue that's holding this issue up, or more of a civil rights issue?
It's funny because I don't know if you can really, even though we're supposed to have separation of church and state, I don't know if you can really say that it is one issue or the other. I think there is so much entanglement that they've kind of become synonymous. In my own personal opinion, I actually believe that this is really more of a civil rights issue. I think when it comes to what different religions or churches want to do and what they want to define as marriage, I think that's their business. I think the government itself should be in the business of ensuring that all of its citizens have equal rights under law, and that means means coming together in a civil union. That means having that civil union have the same benefits regardless of if it is man woman, woman woman, man man, have you. I think that's really where the crux is. Once we start getting into the titles of marriage, I think that's when it gets really sticky, and you start getting into discussion of whether or not government is encroaching on religion or vice versa.
Right. And Jillian and Blue, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, sir. Well, I mean, to me, it's always, Omar and I are very, we're also religious. We were raised very religious. We have religious backgrounds. Although we're not as strongly practiced as we used to be, our beliefs haven't really changed. However, I think it's always been something where we've supported gay marriage and equality for everyone, because I mean, I think it's more of even, and it sounds weird to say, but in the same religion, like I'm Catholic, and just because I'm a Catholic that's also Hispanic, it was never something that was separated or said that it was wrong, so I never got that aspect of it growing up. I don't know if Omar can agree with that.
The funny thing is, I just got off the phone with my mother, and she asked me, you know, we're Christian, right? And I was like, what do you mean by that? I mean, it had been a while since I actually knew that Christians weren't really entirely for same-sex marriages. And she had just asked me, and I was just like, I mean, my best friend is gay. How can I could not see it in myself to tell him that he can't marry someone that he loves or just share his life with somebody? I just feel like it should be legal. I do not see what's wrong with it. How is it a sin? If God is all about love. I mean, I made me question the religion all on its own. But I feel like, in general, it might mainly be a religious issue. I don't know if everybody in the government is Christian, but for the most part, I really feel it's a religious issue more than anything.
Right. So, Cornell, do you wanna pick up on that point in regards to religion?
Yeah, you know, it's so interesting that Omar talked about the experience he had with his mom. I could see myself having the same conversation with my dad. And both my parents have at one point in their life been people of the cloth. And while my mother has come quite a ways as far as her views of homosexuals and even gay rights, I'm not sure where my dad stands with that. And I could very easily see him saying, hey, you do know what it means to be Christian. And, you know, where I stand with that is humans in general, Christian or not, they sin every day. And to hold one form of sin worse over another form of sin, in my opinion, is hypocritical. And so, you know, the question I have, you know, for people who really look at gay rights and say, oh, being homosexual is a sin and it's not to be accepted, I'm like, well, that's interesting, because I'm sure you know any number of people in your life who have sinned in really, really awful ways and do it consistently, and you even know about it. You don't talk about it, but you know about it, and it's still acceptable because they do other things that you think is acceptable. Meanwhile, people who are homosexuals, they may do wonderful things, they may have foundations, they may give to the world in so many wonderful ways, but this sin that they do is so, you know, unspeakable and so, unquestionably bad that they are to be lumped up in another category as different. And I don't agree with it.
Right, and Jillian or Blue, do you have anything to add on top of that?
Yeah, I mean, as far as my family, like I said, my mother's hardcore Catholic, and it's the same aspect, but she's never approached a situation where she questioned religion being a problem for that, right? Like, even when I was younger, it wasn't so much questioned, but it was brought up because a lot of our family members are gay. So she mentioned it to my sister and myself, and how if the possibility was that we were, that she saw it, that she didn't want us hiding anything because she loves us no matter what, and whatever makes us happy. A lot of my family members, besides being Catholic, there are Christians in my family, there's Pentecostals in my family, and a lot of them are strong-minded and very strong in their religion, and most of them don't want to talk about it. They won't bring up the whole conversation about gays or gay marriage. And even though, like, one of my aunts, her daughter is gay, and she doesn't want to bring up the whole subject on it. She's like, I'm fine with her, but it's her soul. So that's something that bothers me, because, I mean, there's so many things that you can question on someone's personality, integrity, and the ways that they sin, whether they're gay or straight. There's so many other things that they could be doing wrong that I've never understood why this is such a big issue, because if love is love, then it shouldn't be such a big deal. And another thing that I saw in the news recently about it's a Christian church. I'm not sure if it's Christian or Catholic church, where there was a guy who's a gay. He's gay, and he's also he was teaching was a religion, and for the students in the school, they actually told him he had to leave because he was gay. And he was perfectly fine with coming into church, but he couldn't teach Sunday school just because of his sexuality. And I didn't understand that. There's like, if he's trying to volunteer his time to teach religion, why is it such a big issue about his sexuality? Meanwhile, he's never mentioned it. It was someone else from the church that mentioned it.
Yeah, you know, one of my friends who's gay, I actually wanted him to be a part of the conversation and to be viewing that he's not able to do it. And what he told me was, he said, "Hey, Cornell, I want you to let people know that the gay agenda, quote unquote, destroying traditional marriage is like 78 on our list of priorities, somewhere behind finding the other sock and trying to reprogram all DVRs so that they record Judge Judy." You know, and he was saying it really to make a point that the gay agenda, quote unquote, really could care less about trying to destroy traditional marriage. They're just wanting to be who they are. They're wanting to love who they want to love, and they're wanting to be in a partnership that can be recognized by their own government. And people who, vilify them wanting to do that and say, "Oh, you're looking to destroy my way of life," it's very funny because you rarely hear gays actually out in the public saying, "I want to tear down traditional marriage and I want to destroy religion." They never bring that up. It's not an issue to them. It's always the other side bring that up, and yet, they swear that it is something the gay agenda is, really hard at work trying to do.
Do you guys agree with that, Jillian?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's love. It's love. How is love wrong in any way? Whether you love somebody in your same sex or not, how is love wrong? That's where I can't help but to support gay rights. Mm-hmm. It's love no matter what. Again, I'm straight, but still, you can love who you want, whether it be a male or a female. It's still love. There's nothing with it. There's no malicious intent in it. There's nothing wrong with loving somebody, and that's why I don't get how people can view being gay wrong in any way. If you love somebody, there's nothing wrong with it. That's basically cut and dry on my end.
Right. So, what are your guys? Cornell, would you mind telling us a little bit about like the recent updates that were taking place in D.C. Regarding this topic, and what sort of the result of those things were? Wasn't there some Supreme Court rulings that had just recently taken place that you can talk about?
Oh goodness, are you talking about specifically? Oh goodness, it was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
that you were talking about as far as the hearing. It's funny because I was following that, and then I guess the last day of the hearing, I never actually heard what, if anything, as far as the ruling on Proposition 8. What was actually decided, if anything? I thought that it got kicked back to California, but I couldn't remember.
Yeah, I think it kind of did get put on hold. Jillian or Blue, do you have any understanding of exactly what happened a couple weeks back?
I think from what I know of, the case was pushed back to June.
All right.
That's the latest I think I've heard. Prolonging the inevitable, I guess.
Right. So yeah. Go ahead, Jillian.
I also feel like that. I'm all for a lot of the things in the news. Everything's serious in the government, but I feel like there's been a lot of major issues all of a sudden that are going on in government that I feel like that they're using it to kind of sway your attention away from this type of conversation. I don't know if you guys see it the same way, but all the current events that are happening, I feel like they're, and even small issues are becoming major just because they're trying to cover up something else. Because I feel like they're trying to steer us away from actually pushing forward for this, and they might even push back the court date a little longer.
I could absolutely see that being the case. For me, I also see it as something that, it's kind of a box. I don't even understand how this got to be so big. I mean, it's pretty simple. There are people that want to have a union. They want to be able to marry the person they love. The state said it was okay, and all of a sudden this has gone to the Supreme Court. And I don't quite understand why it is that people have such a huge issue about civil unions and about a marriage being legal. A church or a particular religion has to respect it and has to observe it. That's a whole other issue, and I don't believe any ruling that's going to actually really rule on that. They can't. But as far as a government, recognizing a union to enter into this agreement and bring all of our things together, bring our life together in a way that can be recognized by the government, I feel like this really should not be nearly as blown up as it has become. And at the same time, yeah, I see that it might be such a big issue that, like Jillian was saying, all these other things are being brought up, and this is being pushed back so that all of the momentum towards people supporting gay marriage wanes, and people forget about it, and then all of a sudden it comes up, and there's not nearly as much of a roar and a full-bodied support for this to happen.
Right. So what do you guys think about the argument that people will make on this subject of, like, if we allow gay marriage, then where are we going to draw the line? What's the next thing that we're going to then allow? Can you guys talk about, the angle which people come in from with that argument, and if you, sort of see what they mean by that at all? Jillian, if you want to start.
What line is there to draw when there's so many other worse things that are happening that they don't seem to be drawing a line on? What line is it that they're trying to say that we're not drawing if we allow the gays to have equality? Like that aspect, I feel like that's. I know I hear that statement a lot. What about the line that's being fun, but there's so many bigger problems. There's so many other things that are happening that they let slide. So why is this such a big issue?
Right.
Yeah, and for me, more than not, you hear conservative voices talking about the slippery slope. If you look historically, the slippery slope generally happens on the conservative side. I mean, how many countries in this world has the United States been involved in that started out, one way, and then conservative, religious mantra ends up running a government, and it becomes, militant. It becomes like a almost radical form of itself, and then it becomes an issue. Whereas you can find so many fewer areas where quote unquote liberal agendas go down a slippery slope that tears down society. And so when I hear somebody say, oh, if we okay gay marriage, what is that going to say? What it says is that the country is saying that it's okay for two people of the same sex to have a union and to have that recognized by the government. That's it. Everything else is a completely another issue, and yes, that might mean that those issues come up and they are up for discussion, and they're up for discussion. I mean, we are in a country where we actually value having discussions, and we have the form of government we have so that people can bring up things that they think are really important and they can be discussed. So for anybody to say we shouldn't do this because what does this mean, next? Well, it means whatever it might mean. Whatever happens after it is not exclusively connected to a decision that is made.
So what threats do you see that can pop up that the other side is a little worried about, that you can
Well, I could see people, saying, "Oh, well, if we allow gay marriage, does that mean we're going to have gay education and sex education?" And I could see that expanding the social conversation. And when it comes down to it, that's really what people who have an issue with gay rights, that's really the foundation, is that they don't want their social way of life questioned. They don't want it to be under any kind of scrutiny. They like it the way it is. They don't want anybody to mess with it. They're happy with people doing whatever they do as long as it doesn't possibly affect them. And that's not the kind of country we live in. I mean, we do things every day. We have discussions every day that might affect other people in another state. That's what comes with being in this kind of country and this kind of government.
Right.
I mean, but that's already out there, like even so, like maybe it would be, something that they would enforce to be mandatory, but the education on as far as gay sex education and everything else, that's already out there. Everyone's already learning about it. So what? Yeah. And Colonel, I'm sorry.
But no, I was going to say I agree. I'm just saying I can hear the same people who are going to make the slippery slope complaint saying, "Oh my God, are you going to institutionalize education about homosexuals and now that's bringing that into the classroom?" I could see them going there because that is the kind of issue that's like the next step that they see, because again, all of this is attack on their social way of understanding and existence, and they don't want anything to possibly do that.
Yeah, and I get that. I could see that totally happening as well. But I feel like that maybe they should be in support of something where then the younger generation can learn about it in the proper way than having to learn about it in maybe the wrong way because other people are putting it in their face towards either hate or just because they're learning it maybe a little too soon about anything. But even like regular sex education, most of that's learned way too early. So, I mean, I don't know.
Well, it's funny because...
Guys, I'll be right back. Just continue your conversation. I just have to run downstairs quickly.
Okay. I think it's funny because in a number of states where they have maybe predominantly abstinence sex education, their rates of teen pregnancy and, and STDs is either comparable to any other state or it's actually higher. So, it really proves that lack of education, lack of exposure can really do a lot of harm, because if you don't find out about something until maybe you're 30, your ability to really grasp it and really, the mind's ability to really be malleable and all that, it's different than when you are, say, 10 or 12 or whatnot. And so you haven't had 30 years of one way of looking at things to now undo because you're just finding out about something. So, for people to say, "Oh, we don't want to open up this Pandora's box," or "We don't want to, go somewhere where we don't have to go," it's like, well, it's out there. It's in entertainment. It's all over the place. It is a part of popular culture. To ignore it and act like it's not there is really, it's ignorant.
It's super ignorant.
No, I can also see how it's an issue. It's been, quote unquote, wrong for so long. And I mean, at one point, I would give like 20 years ago, maybe it was just like to be gay was such a big secret. Like, hence the terms of coming out the closet. Like, it had to be held a secret. It was so wrong that just because everybody saw it to be that way. But now it's starting to kind of just unveil. It's not really that big of, it's not an issue at all anymore for the most part, especially if it's gone pop. I think right now the only barrier is getting it through the government. And I think that's the final step. But I feel like eventually that's going to be the case. I think on our end, the support is going to be strong enough. I mean, the community is way bigger now than it was before because everybody's out, and we're a country of freedom as well. Like, if we can't be free to love who we want to love, then it just makes our government the only hypocrite.
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird how we live in a place where they can glorify a teenage pregnancy on a major network, but we can't show love between two people. You know,
I do.
And this is another way of even the younger generation getting educated in the wrong manner. All these girls, these young girls, that teenage pregnancy is at the highest rate, and I see this every day where there's even young girls experiencing bisexuality not for the right reasons, but for the wrong reasons, for more so to have attention from the opposite sex, and that's something that never really talks about, but it should be talked about. Because if they were educated a little bit more, then they would know that it's not just a trend.
Right.
You know, a lot of the younger generation feel that way, that it's just something that's cool. You know, and it's deeper. It's way deeper than that. It's something that someone is, and they can choose to be that, and it should be a place where that it's okay to be who they are rather than hide themselves.
Well, you know, and I feel like what you're saying as far as the younger generation not understanding the substance of, you know, of the gay movement, of the gay, you know, community being you know, one that is historical. It's not just something that happened this decade. Is, you know, I really feel like it's the people who are older, who have been homosexuals for a long time and have done any number of things in their life. I think it's so important for them to be a part of the conversation, and for them to, you know, talk to younger people and say, hey, you know what? Yeah, you know, I was married for 15 years to somebody that I didn't love because, you know what? I didn't want to admit that I was gay. I didn't believe that my family would accept me as being gay, and it was miserable. You know, I have children that I love, and they grew up the first few years of their lives, you know, living a lie. They grew up as a part of the lie that I had to, you know, live because I didn't feel like I was accepted. And, you know, if you look at even the civil rights movement, I can't think of his name, but there was a gentleman who had a real significant part in the very start of the civil rights movement. He worked with Martin Luther King Jr. and a number of people, especially on the bus boycott, you know, down south. He was gay, and it wasn't, you know, openly, widely talked about, and it was known. And he was working with religious leaders. He was working with, you know, people from all over the place, you know, for civil rights. And it's kind of ironic because while, you know, he was a black man who was gay working for civil rights, even most likely in the community that he was working in, he wasn't accepted because, you know, they didn't accept gays. And yet, you know, it's been that long a part of our country's history, and for us to not recognize that and not have it be just a part of the conversation as opposed to a gay history conversation is really sad, and it does the history of our country a severe injustice.
Yeah. There's someone on the chat room that actually asked a question. Dominga asked, I would like to ask the speakers on the panel, do you think it should be so hard for the USA government to accept and pass gay rights laws when the active gay community has and does show their rights? Let me start that off. Do you want to start that off?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. One of you all, please.
I mean, would it be so hard? I can't help but to think biasly. Like it's love at the end of the day. How does it hurt anybody? How is it bad? How is it wrong to pass this? To not pass this? I mean, to pass the law in general. There's no wrong in it. I would love to ask somebody to justify why is being gay or having their rights wrong in any way. I don't see it being. I honestly really see this ending on a positive note. I just feel like the case is probably being prolonged, maybe for reasons that might not be aware. But I do see this ending in a positive way. I really don't see this going the wrong way.
Jen, do you have anything you want to say about
No,
that?
I totally what Omar has to say.
You know, I don't think it should be so hard, and you know, part of I think the beauty of this is that, you know, I feel like these conversations, they are complex, and they do strike at, you know, the heart of what it means to be, you know, a free country and all of that. And so I don't think it should be that hard. I do think we should be having this conversation. I mean, I'm glad we're having this conversation right here. You know, I'd say overall, I don't think it should be nearly the issue that it has become, because when it comes to even the Constitution, there's not much of a leg to stand on, because the same people that want to say, oh, well, there's nothing in the Constitution that, you know, that guarantees, you know, gays the right to marry. Well, there's nothing in the Constitution that guarantees people to have the right of, you know, guns with, like, you know, 15 magazine, you know, clips in them. I mean, it says the right to bear arms. It doesn't say you have the right to bear any kind of arm you feel like it. So, you know, for anybody to really look to the Constitution and say, oh, well, there's nothing that gives them that right, I would honestly, you know, really go back to what I started with, as far as, you know, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If being able to be with your partner is your way of pursuing happiness, well, this country was founded on supporting that and standing behind that. And I know I really don't think in the end that it's something the country should stand in the way of for, you know, moral or religious reasons, when we are, you know, intentionally not a religious government.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the funny thing, that they're so strong about fighting gun rights, but they're not strong about fighting equality.
Right, absolutely.
Right. So, what are your guys' thoughts on how the media is portraying this this subject? And you guys bring up that you think it's turned into a larger issue than it needs to be. So, can you kind of discuss, you know, the media's impact on this issue and what's doing positively or negatively for it? I guess Cornell, if you want to start.
You know, I think the media, unfortunately, has become like a self-serving beast. You know, it used to be a tool that was used to get people the facts and let them know what's going on, and then it became about selling papers. Then it became about getting people to stay in touch in every form of media possible. And, you know, I can't really say I feel like the media has been any worse on gay rights than it has any other really important issue. But as far as this issue, you know, we were actually talking, Max, while you were away. I was bringing up that, you know, gays have been important parts of our country's history, you know, from civil rights to any number of movements that have made this country what it is. And so few times do we actually talk about that. We always talk about the here and the now and the sensational. And I wish that the conversation and the media in general would do a better job of bringing in the historical context of, you know, those who, you know, either were confirmed or by all intents and purposes were gay, you know, what they have done for this country throughout its history that we have all benefited from, and how much better maybe their lives would have been if they could actually be who they are, and if they could love who they wanted to love and do it openly without, you know, having to kind of, you know, skulk around in the darkness and, you know, live a lie.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't say I'm entirely mad at how much attention it's getting, because I guess the fact that it's always televised and it's always being spoken of, I think it's a good thing, because it shows how important the situation is. But I completely agree with Cornell in terms of, I wish they could actually show some people in history, you know, who were of such, and just to show that even then, when it was society thought it to be wrong, there were still positive people within that time frame who had that preference to also kind of just show people in that light on a positive note. In general, I feel like the media could actually focus on people of a gay preference to just to shed a better light on them in general.
Right. So, the next thing then that I would ask you guys to maybe address is, like, it's been a good question I feel like people have, like, trying to answer is, can you talk about what you think the public is misunderstanding about this issue as a whole? In terms of, like, just average individuals not really getting, the best overall sense of what the subject's all about because they're only listening to the media or they're just, in their own little bubble. Like, can you just kind of talk about what you think the public's misunderstanding about the entire issue, I guess?
Do you guys want to start with that?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's hard. I mean, I have to think in general that the fact that it's gone, like it's people kind of just have the media to go to what was going on right now. But not much is being shown like this. It's just, for the most part, it's really showing the case in itself and people fighting for the right, but they don't see why. They don't see no negatives and no positives are really being shown. So I don't think anybody's being educated on the topic itself in general. They're just really seeing the case. So
it's the case, and it's also they just see the negative news and the sad news of when a teenager either commits suicide or you see a lot of bullying happening because of someone coming out or anything in that light. They see that aspect, and then a lot of times I feel like, I personally feel like a lot of people think that it's just a trend or it's just some sort of choice for attention, and it's not. I think that that's the negative light that they're shedding on it, where they feel like marriage is not, and that's totally. That's totally wrong. It shouldn't be shed in that light. They should be placing it in more of like as everybody's saying, love is love. So,
right.
Yeah, something
like,
that
why is same sex an issue at all?
Yeah.
Something I really appreciate is people like Rachel Maddow and I believe Don Lemon. Those are two openly gay people who are specifically in the media, and I appreciate them because at least, I don't see Don Lemon a lot, but at least, with Rachel Maddow, she really shines a light, and, she actually will bring historical context to the gay rights movement. She talked about, the people, I believe it was ACT UP, who were really, really prominent in the 80s as far as the AIDS conversation and demonstrating and really shining a much brighter light on the AIDS issue so that people understood, hey, this isn't just something that's happening, in San Francisco or over in like specific parts. This is going on everywhere, and it's really important to look at. As far as what I think the public really is maybe miseducated or doesn't understand about this is, and we've touched on it, is the assumption that allowing gays to marry and to have their union recognized by the government is somehow going to like tear their religion down, or is somehow going to absolutely strike at the heart of religion, when really it's just saying, hey, you know what, the government recognizes that these two people have brought themselves and their property and their lives together, and we're going to recognize that when it comes to things that the government controls, like insurance, like hospitals, like funerals, like any number of things that are connected to people being legally brought together in marriage. And that's really where it stops. Everything else that goes on from that, as far as any kind of moral questioning or any kind of moral attacks on religion and what it means to be Christian or whatnot that's all subjective, and that is really more of an individualized consequence. But this legislation and the issue being brought before the Supreme Court and even in California is not seeking to change religion in any way. But I feel like that's where things get stuck. That's where people in general that really don't understand it, just kind of hear about it every so often, they get stuck in that. They're like, oh, you can't change what it means to be Methodist or Baptist, and it's not looking to do that at all.
Right. So just quickly, what I was going to say is, in a few minutes, I'm going to have to end the recording that I have going right now because we have another discussion taking place in 10 minutes on gun control that I have to go and record. But what I was going to say is, one of the viewers, Dominga, she asked a question at the bottom. Do you think the USA government prolonging this puts gays into danger for more extreme anti-gay people who act against gays? If you guys want to comment on that question, that'd be great. And then I just wanted to really thank you each for participating, and we'll definitely be more than happy to have you back on again to participate.
Yeah, you all want to start?
I think prolonging the case, I don't know if it'll necessarily put anybody in danger. I mean, I feel like whether the law is passed or not, whoever is biased about the situation is going to be biased. I think that's the negative world we live in that sense. It's a step closer. Once the law is passed, it's a step closer to where things should be, at least in our opinion. But will it prolong? I don't think that has an effect on what happens from here on out in that sense, in terms of people being biased and abusive towards gay people.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I feel like all this would actually do is make it so that, maybe eventually, if the Supreme Court says, gays have the right to, have their union recognized by the government, I think what that does is make it so that any states that say, hey, I'm sorry, you all can't be on an insurance plan together because you're same sex, you're not really married, I think it makes it so that people can then, take that to court and say, wait, we legally can be married, but when it comes to, people who have issues with gays, this isn't going to do a single thing to, I think, deter them or, cause them to really rethink what they're doing, because, in fact, more likely, this being passed might have the opposite effect. It might actually result in some of those people, actually wanting to lash out because they're so unhappy about the ruling. So I don't know if I feel like it's going to really make it any worse or better. It's just, people who hate are going to hate.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, great. So here's what I was going to say. I'm going to put my Facebook name in the bottom of the text chat. And if you guys want to friend me on Facebook so that it would be a little easier to, let's say, get you in the schedule, as opposed to, on Twitter, if that gets a little bit of a hassle with tracking people's comments, you can feel free to friend request me. If you guys want to continue speaking, you're more than welcome to, and just so you know, you're more than welcome to come and speak on Vonvo whenever you want. You don't even need to be scheduled. The platform's open, 24/7, so you can use this for whatever you like, honestly. But thank you so much for participating, and we'll look forward to having you back on again. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
You got it. No problem.
Thank you so much.
Yep. Great.